In our next two transformations, we're going to be looking at stretches and compressions. We're going to start with dilations. If I multiply my function by some value, it's going to stretch it vertically. So if I have my number in front of my exponential power, I'm going to multiply each y value by that. Now, if I multiply it by a number bigger than 1, I'm going to stretch it away from the x-axis. If I multiply it by a number between 0 and 1, a fraction, I'm going to compress it towards the x-axis. The important thing to remember is that a value, the number in front of your power, it multiplies it so it stretches my y value. So if I look at example 5, I've got 1/4 to the 3x power. I'm multiplying by 1/4, which is less than 1, isn't it? So I'm going to take each of my values, I'm going to multiply them by 1/4. So it gets compressed towards the x-axis. So this is compression. I'm going to say vertical compression. By a factor of 1/4. We can show this in decimals. So let's say I've got y equals 2 to the x power. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to multiply by a number big. Let me switch colors here so it looks different. There we go. So now I'm going to multiply it by a number bigger than 1. And notice what happens. It stretches each of these values by a factor of up to 1. Now, if I make my a value less than 1, notice as I multiply by something smaller, it gets shrunk or compressed towards the x-axis. So that's the key. Now it's just backwards if it's in the exponent. So if I have a number in the exponent, it's a horizontal dilation. And when I do a horizontal dilation, I'm going to divide each x value. I'm not really moving the y. I'm keeping the y the same. And I'm going to move my x value, and I'm going to divide it. So I'm really going to do it backwards. So I'm going to divide by that value that's in front. So in other words, I'm going to take 2. I'm going to take each value, each x value, I'm going to divide it by 2. Well, if I divided each x value by 2, I'm going to stretch that horizontally, aren't I? So it's a horizontal stretch. My z isn't showing up. Horizontal stretch by a factor of 2 or 1/2. So we take a look at this on decimals. Might be easy to see on decimals. So if I'm going to multiply by, let's do this one. I'm going to go a to the x power. And then let's play my a value. So what's happening here is I'm stretching it horizontally as my numbers, okay, by less than 1. Okay, so if you multiply it by, well, we talked about greater than 1, and I did less than 1, didn't I? Okay, so if I do less than 1, I'm going to stretch it horizontally away from the y-axis. If it's greater than 1, I'm going to stretch it horizontally towards the y-axis. In other words, if my number is bigger, it gets closer to the x-axis. You can see here in this static picture how it got closer to the x-axis. That's what we're doing.